The other interesting thing that happened to me while preparing my thoughts was that I would have one thought about Savitri, and immediately this one thought would spread out into innumerable ways to go, my mind would go into. So one thought would lead not to a linear next thought, but it would lead in so many directions. And it occurred to me that this seems to be a feature of Savitri itself, this kind of infinitude that at every step one meets. So I will see how I find my way through the maze of infinity, and I hope that some linearity will be there sufficiently for our minds to follow. A while ago, you probably remember that I had very casually and playfully put together a series of photos of landscapes that was inspired. It was actually line by line following part of the journey of Savitri, of her quest, because they just came up so strongly in my mind. It was so incredibly pictorial. And I had great fun doing that. And then when the call came for each of us to present, I said, I'm fine, I've done my job. Perfect, I don't need to do anything further. But afterwards, thinking a little more deeply, I felt that Savitri meaning so much to me, and being, I would say, perhaps the most central element in my life, I couldn't get away that cheaply. Something more was there to be shared. And this is how I set out and tried to share a little bit more with my own journey with Savitri so far, which of course is one single journey among, 6 or 7 billions, if we just take the world population of humans, of journeys that will be possible through Savitri. As a mother said, she says somewhere, and when I quote here, anything I quote that the mother said, Sri Aurobindo or others, I did not have to try and track exactly the source, so I will always paraphrase. So it won't be exact quotes. But what I do remember is that somewhere she says that Sri Aurobindo crammed the whole universe into this single book. And I think that is certainly the experience of all of us who have an experience, however small it may be, of Savitri. In a way, the limitation of experience through Savitri, I think, is only my own limitation. At every step, there are so many dimensions that open. And if I read a passage now and think, oh wow, now I understand something. And if I read the same passage 2 years later, probably I'll have the same thought again, because again, one other little door will have opened. It may seem big to me, but it's certainly like an infinitesimal part of the whole. So there, of course, infinite ways of journeying through Savitri, and we all know some of them. We go to classes, we have exhibitions, we know Huta Ben's paintings, it's a whole journey. Or I just brought this book because it came into my hand recently, and just because about a week ago or 2, or Willie left his body and entered the light, and came across his book almost by chance. And I like how he puts it. It's a log of a journey through Sri Aurobindo Savitri, a journey, his journey. And at the back he says, although the time period involved in Sri Aurobindo Savitri is one mystical day, William Netter's journey spans a lifetime. These for me are lovely reminders. And his pictures speak a language which personally I do not understand. I also do not necessarily understand Hutaben's language, but I simply honor them as something I have not discovered yet. We know composing. Sunil does music. Many people, many of our friends also have spent long time translating Savitri, and not necessarily, I believe, to make it available to a wider public, but to immerse themselves more deeply into Savitri. We've done Savitri in the forest, an experience of reading in unison, which was very interesting. Many of us have participated in Akanda Path, or the unending reading, cover to cover of Savitri, which is always an amazing experience, very, very different. And every time we finish, I said, I must spend more time with Savitri. I really want to take days and days to just be with Savitri, and I haven't managed yet. How does one deal with something that is as big as the universe itself? I always come across and come up against my own limitations. At the beginning of the journey, I believe for most of us, it is natural to try and go through the mind. And very often, we've been taught to be analytical about things. I have always had a tendency also to be very skeptical of this mind. And when Sri Aurobindo gives the description of the journey through the realms of the mind, I was very strongly reminded of what happens so easily. And I just marked a few passages which I thought I could share. Starting with, you will recognize it easily, with the little mind. She strove to reduce to rules the mystic world. Nothing she knew, but all things hoped to know. A sovereign worker through the centuries, observing and remolding all that is, confident she took up her stupendous charge. There, the low, bent and mighty figure sits, bowed under the arc lamps of her factory home, amid the clatter and ringing of her tools. A rigorous stare in her creative eyes, coercing the plastic stuff of cosmic mind. She sets the hard inventions of her brain in a pattern of eternal fixity. Or, faithful to her limited sphere she toiled, but knew its highest, widest seeing was a half-search. Its mightiest acts a passage or a stage. For not by reason was creation made, and not by reason can the truth be seen. On we can pass into the realms and the kingdoms of the greater mind. And we will come across slightly different attitudes. Archmasons of the eternal thaumaturge, molders and measurers of fragmented space, they have made their plan of the concealed and known a dwelling house for the invisible king. To all that spirit conceives, they gave a mold. Persuading nature into visible moods, they lend a finite shape to infinite things. Each power that leaps from the unmanifest, leaving the largeness of the eternal peace, they seized and held by their precision eye, and made a figurante in the cosmic dance. Its free caprice they bound by rhythmic laws, and compelled to accept its posture and its line in the wizardry of an ordered universe. On the next page. The mighty mother's whims and lightning moods, arisen from her all-wise unruled delight, in the freedom of her sweet and passionate breast, robbed of their wonder, were chained to a cause and aim. The surging wave throbs of her vast sea heart, they bound to a theorem of order beats. Her deep designs, which from herself she had veiled, bowed self-revealed in their confessional. For the birth and death of the worlds they fixed a date. The diameter of infinity was drawn, measured the distant arc of the unseen heights, and visualized the plumbless, viewless depths, till all seemed known that in all time could be. All was coerced by number, name, and form. Nothing was left untold, incalculable. By knowing too much, they missed the whole to be known. The fathomless heart of the world was left unguessed, and the transcendent kept its secrecy. But hope is there, and he shows us how. Out of our thoughts we must leap up to sight, breathe her divine illimitable air, her simple, vast supremacy confess, dare to surrender to her absolute. Then the unmanifest reflects his form in the still mind as in a living glass. The timeless ray descends into our hearts, and we are wrapped into eternity. No, the timeless ray descends into our hearts, and we are wrapped into eternity. And a few pages before, a fire shall come out of the infinitudes. A greater gnosis shall regard the world, crossing out of some far omniscience on lustrous seas from the still wrapped alone to illumine the deep heart of self and things. A timeless knowledge it shall bring to mind, its aim to life, to ignorance its close. While still caught up in my little mind, I find it very comforting and promising to see the horizons promised. Now, we're supposed to talk about Savitri's quest. And what struck me when I was looking at this was that in our own quest to understand Savitri, maybe Savitri's quest can give a clue. Because when we think how she starts out, her journey goes through the busy cities, loud and clamorous, many streets. We need a map to go through. It's like the little mind and maybe the greater mind, castles, royal grandeur, but it's still a very busy space. From there, where does she go? She goes into much quieter spaces. She goes into plains hushed and happy in the embrace of light. She goes into forests where she finds a lonely hermitages with the sages and saints and teachers, and time takes a different rhythm. She learns from there on a higher plane. But even then, ultimately, to find her destiny, she has to leave them too. She has to move beyond into a space where no human has trod before. Ultimately, to meet the one she has come for so far. Of course, there is another journey, also Savitri's, that we are we find described so beautifully. And that is the journey to the finding of the soul. There too, she travels, she finds the various voices, the various people and entities and forces and beings. But ultimately there too, she has to tread a narrow path, trod only by a few wounded pilgrim feet, until she comes to the space where that intimacy is possible. And where is it? It is in the heart. There only can she merge, have that ultimate merging with the Lord of her life. So this is a parallel that I somehow felt, and a journey that for sure will take a lifetime as far as I'm concerned, possibly many more than one. But in the meantime, I often remember something that Mother said when she said at some stage, if you read Savitri, it is as if the Lord Himself took you by your hand and led you. It is such a wonderful, wonderful guide. And it is, even though we're still in our mind and everything, we're perfectly human, but that direct contact for me is possible through Savitri, like through in no other way. It comes up when we read it, when we hear the words, which seem so, the words are so alive, the mantric quality. If we just open up, it's like, to me, it almost seems, you can see, you can feel the living hand molding with the sounds and creating reality. You understand why the rishis were the seers and the creators at the same time. You hear the speech, and often it's almost like when you read silently, it's like we hear the voice of the Master himself. And in that sense, I consider reading Savitri every time a darshan with his presence. And I'm not surprised at the anecdote that, I don't know who, but somewhere there is an anecdote of somebody close to Sri Aurobindo in his room, and Savitri was lying somewhere, and this sadhak put something on top of Savitri. And Sri Aurobindo is told to have said to him, "Don't put anything on Savitri, it is my body." I've never forgotten that. So, if Savitri can take us by our hand, it is possible, I believe, and my experience, that it is on a day-to-day basis can be our guide. Again, I was told that Mother taught this method to some sadhaks or sadhikas, that saying that whenever you have a question, you simply open it up to the divine, open it up to the Lord, and open Savitri, and see the line that comes. I was told this maybe 2 decades ago or more, and since then, it has been my only guide, basically, apart from my own mind, which is not very reliable. And it is a journey that is a journey of unending discovery, day to day. It's hard to describe, also because it becomes so personal. When you're with Savitri, it's like you really have the darshan. You ask Mother, you ask Sri Aurobindo, and you open. And the answers that come are often so unbelievably precise. Not only precise, but so often, like they tell, at least in my experience, they tell much more than I have asked for. Sometimes very banal, like little examples that are, well, do we go to the movie tonight or not? Open, and a line comes, or 2 lines, that the scribe not only say yes or no, but they actually tell us exactly what's going to be in the movie. This is just one tiny example of daily experiences that we had. And yeah, also the sense of humor is just absolutely amazing. When I tend to be quite free with sharing, so I have no problem also sometimes suggesting to somebody, well, you could ask to the Savitri. Sharing this, the reactions are of different sorts, including critical, of course, like, don't you think it's too easy? Don't you think you can and should think for yourself? And don't you think that the masters are too busy? Why are you going to bother them with every little question? Or others, interesting. In my experience, the proof of the pudding lies in eating it. And I'm sure for each one, the journey will be completely different. The experience will be different. But I do not believe that it eclipses completely the thinking. I do not believe that we can bother the divine too much. I rather, in my experience, believe that it helps me to grow into a little greater alignment of my own thoughts with the divine direction. And what is interesting is that every time I say, do I ask through Savitri? No, I don't think so. I know that somewhere in the corner of mine I have a resistance. Justified or not. But I know it's there. And I have to admit it and I have to look at it. And so, yeah, for me it's a living sadhana. And it's an ongoing journey. I don't think I can really say much more about it, except that just to say that I can't imagine what my life would be without Savitri. And just my infinite gratitude to them for bringing it down and giving it to us. Thank you.